So now I'm too weak to stay on a bike? Huh?
Just hold on tight, will you? What?
I might be falling after all. Psych?
Welcome to Bronze Dad Plays, where today we took a look at Final Fantasy VII Remake, the long-awaited redo of a favorite chapter in the Final Fantasy saga. There are a lot of opinions out there about Final Fantasy VII Remake. A lot of different channels base their reviews on different things. Some people have played the original, some people have not. But on this channel, we evaluate games based on 3 categories: limited time, limited skill, and limited resources. As a dad, I think about these things constantly when deciding what game I want to invest in. And based on those categories, let me tell you, this review was personally tough. So, how does FF7R stack up? Is it right for a busy lifestyle, and can you make progress as a low-skill player? First, let's talk to those of you with limited time. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a reimagining of the original Final Fantasy VII. It's not exactly the same story, but it follows a lot of the same themes, and the story points generally stay similar. Some things have been moved forward from future areas in the story, but most stays about where it was. There's a lot more backstory to the characters, and there's more time invested in getting to know the world around you. They've added a full 3D world compared to the partial 3D of the original game, making this more expansive not only from a scale perspective, but in the environmental storytelling and the subtle gestures and emotions the characters display. In the first part of Final Fantasy VII Remake, you're playing through what is essentially the first sixth of the original game. This is the first major city, which originally had a few panels, but now is its own massive world. The first part could take anywhere from 30 to 80 hours depending on your speed, your personal skill, and how much of the game you wish to complete. The main story constantly drives forward in a linear fashion, but it does open up for bigger play spaces or side quest hubs. You can pause anything at any time and pick up right where you left off, making it great for when you've got to address something in the house. However, multiple play sessions can get a little difficult because some of the chapters are rather long and you can get lost. I'm in the process of uploading every single chapter I've played to YouTube as Let's Plays. If you're here for that kind of content, check the upper corner right now. Replayability comes in the form of chapter select when you finish the game. You can play hard mode, as well as unlock alternate things in the story in very specific chapters. Generally, for people with limited time, this is a game that can work. It fills out a lot of hours, and there's a lot of fun to be had in between, so this is recommended. What about those of you with limited skill? Well, I'm a low skill player myself, but I find Final Fantasy VII Remake has struck a nice balance. The game doesn't have to be hard, but it's best played in normal or hard mode where you do have some challenge. It makes more sense in the story and generally feels good in the hands. Classic mode was added, which was a very interesting twist. It allows you to play this action game without playing the action parts. You treat it more like the combat system of the original game with the ATB gauge. However, for me, it was far more enjoyable to hack and slash in between the spellcasts. There's an easy mode that's very easy. It's great for those who only want the story, but it has a small mismatch between the story challenge and the high stakes presented, and the combat, which becomes very basic. The pause menu when casting is a godsend, but it's not perfect. It can feel a little clunky. ATBs charge at different rates for different characters, meaning you could fall behind if you're not directly in control of that character. It adds a lot of depth and complexity to the combat, but ultimately is there for those who wish to master it. You can work your way through without fully understanding the depths of the combat. Things are a little clunky until you understand the flow, but generally you can make it through even as a low skill player. One particular piece I did not like is that the enemies always focus on you. Even if you change characters to someone who should be generating less threat like Aerith, the enemies will instantly lock onto you and attempt to take you down. I really feel this is against the core nature of the combat, so I hope that Square Enix does something to balance this out. But those of you with limited skill, you've got a lot of options here, and as you get better, you can take on additional challenges, so this is highly recommended. What about those with limited resources? Look, this is a $60 game that lasts 30 to 80 hours, so on the surface, average value. The quality is generally strong throughout, but is at its peak in the story moments, and those moments do have multiple hours between them at times. Considering this will require you to buy a few more parts to complete the full story, we do run into an issue. People are estimating anywhere from 1 to 4 more parts to fully flesh out this story. That makes this a $200 to $300 game when it's all said and done. I would recommend that if you've got a limited budget, you hold off and wait for a good sale to experience this part. But it also means that you'll have to hold off on the second part, the third, the fourth, the fifth. We really don't know where this stops at this point. All we know is that this portion of the game was just an intro. So if you've got limited resources, this is not a recommended game for you. What are my final thoughts? Look, this is a beautiful, modern Final Fantasy game. This takes the best of every Final Fantasy since Final Fantasy X. You've got expanded combat, you've got the stagger gauge that allows you to take advantage of your enemies. You've got a beautiful 3D world with complex characters who seem simple on the surface. You've got the environmental storytelling that we've learned from games like Dark Souls. You've got a combat system that attempts to merge the action combat favored in the industry today with ATB combat that's favored by Final Fantasy fans. And if you don't like action combat, Square Enix has done you right and included a whole separate mode just for you. Single-player stories are generally not repeatable games, but again, Square Enix has delivered here and given you a chapter select so you can re-experience specific points in the story, play them differently, or play them with higher difficulty. Yes, it can get clunky at times, but there's a lot of depth here. There's complexity to master. And if you enjoy this game, there's a lot to min-max. If you don't necessarily enjoy the combat, you can still experience this whole thing on easy or classic mode. We're guaranteed to get more game from this beautiful world and these unique characters. But is it worth it? This is possibly my second or third favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. Now, don't hate me, but Final Fantasy X and 13 are my top two, so I might have just lost some subscribers, but that's the truth. Don't at me. This could become even higher in my list once I've experienced the full story end-to-end, which I haven't been able to do with the original Final Fantasy VII. But my channel and my criteria are around gaming dads. And for gaming dads, this game is mixed recommendation. If you have the time, if you have the ability to sit down and play this game, if life has given you an opportunity right now to enjoy these hours, then absolutely pick this up. But if you're deciding what game you can or cannot play this year, this may not make your top choice. Maybe wait for a compilation so you can play the whole thing end to end for better value. Thanks for joining me here on Bronze Dad Plays. Make sure to check out my channel for more reviews, lists, and gameplay. But for now, if you're trying to learn how to play Final Fantasy with the family, click right here. Until next time, see ya.